Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
Well, it's a beautiful morning here in Lagos.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I'm Kayode Kikelu.
That was a pause. But going through the ICRC report and the National Human Rights Commission, bringing that to bear, again, more concerns. It just appears as though there's always a reason to something not going right somewhere that you need to point out. But these things are, when corrected, ultimately will benefit society. So that's why they need to be highlighted.
Oh, yes.
However, as much as possible. And this one has to be where you see about 23,000 cases of missing persons. Nigeria having the highest case of such in Africa. And it does raise a lot of questions as to so many things. Well, yeah, they were talking about in this decade of war, those amounts of people have been recorded missing. Parents going to ICRC and highlighting those cases. And, so many things come to mind. First is that, look, in that particular report, they said 60% of them were minors who, of course, so you see, shows how dangerous it is if 60% of them are minors, it means we need to pay attention to something. And then if our reporting systems are not checked, going to the ICRC, you would have thought that there should have been another agency of government who have all of these records. But perhaps some may excuse it, saying it's understandable given the circumstance. But we've made and still are making several attempts to improve the database in this country. What kind of impact is that having? Because, many people have CCTV cameras in different places, but beyond some of those, you just tend to ask yourself, well, can some of those images even be identified? Because we know how people flock in to this country and questions are raised as to people don't even know who they see, as quote unquote their neighbors or within their environs. And there's just so much that we need to pay attention to. But ultimately, what this just, at least the little takeaway, if there's any, is that people need to be careful out there.
Absolutely.
Because you just never know. You just never know.
And some of the reasons given, because this is a curious case, 23,000 disappeared or missing people over the past 10 years. That's a major source of concern. And this is, there's a saying that says, knowing that a person has passed on, a Yoruba saying, is perhaps better than a missing person, because it's neither here nor there. You probably wake up every morning thinking, where's this person?
It's even more traumatizing.
Yeah, because there's no closure at all. Yeah. So for people to have, and I imagine a lot of people at least will know someone who has been missing in the past 10 years, who has either been kidnapped, has either disappeared, and the rest. And what was shocking for me in this particular one is the fact that it is said that even security agencies, state actors, are also responsible for some of the disappearances. And the question is, why would you arrest someone and not give the person access to get in touch with family members or their lawyer? And we've had this repeated time and again. And that was one of the sour points for me, to have this part of reports saying that even government agencies, I'm talking security agencies, are part of the problem. And I was thinking, how could we solve this really? Because this is alarming. Nigeria accounts for 23,000 out of just 44,000, not just, out of the 44,000 in Africa. That's a lot. And I thought, can we use technology as a way out? I know it sounds cliche. They say technology is a solution.
Do we want to use technology? That's the thing.
Because it's there for the taking, isn't it?
Well, if you look at the NHRC report, we've talked about this time and again. Listen to the cases. Listen to what many of those panels say across the country. It just opens your eyes to, wow, this actually goes on in the same country that everybody is in. And so much was done, still with impunity. If you listen to some of those cases, how people are grabbed, arrested, treated, the property taken, they just feel, yeah, do what you can. We are whoever we are, and they quote unquote above the law. And so these are the things that go on that you just keep raising more questions as though, look, if you even go to the jail now, the awaiting trial mates, many of them, well, let me not say many of them, but as a result of that panel, the outcome of that panel. It just shows you that there are so many questions that need to be asked about the ATMs. I know that the judiciary, I think the former Minister of Interior had spoken about what they need to do to improve all of that, even with the judiciary, which we'll be focusing on later today. So that's why I say, look, it's just that cycle. It's societal challenges that keeps revolving. But let's just bring you this report so you can hear from some of those who were involved in gathering these data and the concerns raised.
You may be seated.
The 30th of August every year is set aside by the United Nations as a day for the disappeared, and the National Human Rights Commission is marking the day in Abuja to raise awareness on the needs to manage the expectations of family members. In a recent report by the International Committee of the Red Cross, there are 44,000 registered missing people in Africa. Nigeria accounts for 23,000 of these figures. Insecurity in the form of banditry and kidnapping is contributing significantly to Nigeria's rising cases of the disappeared.
The spate of abductions, kidnappings, and forced disappearances by security agencies increased. There is no doubt that the problem with various insurgency groups have exacerbated the problem.
It is also sad to note that Nigeria has the highest number of the disappeared in the whole of Africa. It's heartbreaking and it's condemnable.
For the National Human Rights Commission, it is even more worrisome that security agencies contribute to the number of missing persons.
You will agree with me that our dear country is witnessing increasing cases of missing or disappeared persons, and no part of the country is immune from this. And it is worrisome when our law enforcement agents arrest and detain citizens and refuse to communicate this to their families.
Emotions run high as relatives of missing persons share their experiences.
I lost an elder brother in 2018, and the questions his children normally ask me, "Uncle, where is my daddy?" A 4-year-old boy will ask me, "Is my daddy dead?"
In the last 10 years, 23,000 people have been registered as missing in Nigeria, and the number could be more. This explains the opening of a register for proper documentation of missing persons by the National Human Rights Commission, which will enable family members to get the needed support and care.
All right, welcome back. Let's run you through some of the daily. To start with Nigerian Tribune today. Conflicting court orders. CJN summons chief judges of Rivers, Imo, Anambra, 2 other states. So that is the big one at the front page of Tribune here today. And then you see, several other ones here. Plateau military warns residents against self-defense. Government threatens showdown with those fanning embers of violence. Relaxes curfew in 3 local government areas. NANS demands compensation for families of slain students. So they keep an eye on that particular matter. And then, well, don't forget that it's the 31st of August, September 1. This story above that, the lead one. September 1, anti-open grazing deadline, where southern states stand. So you see a host of riders here. Rivers, Bayelsa, Ekiti, Oyo, ready for enforcement. Ondo signs bill into law today. Delta, yet to enact law. Uncertainty in Ebonyi, Imo. Edo governor yet to send bill to assembly. Public hearing on bill holds in Enugu. Bill in second reading in Akwa Ibom assembly. Don't frustrate enforcement, Afenifere tells FG. So you've got a lot just happening on the front page with this particular story on the front page of Nigerian Tribune here today. Okay. Pardon me. Did we see that? We didn't. Okay, well, that's Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Take a look at Daily Trust newspaper. It's packed as well. The big one, CJN moves to end forum shopping, that's a parenthesis, as lawyers worry over conflicting judgments, summons 6 chief judges. Working at cross purpose removes confidence in the judiciary. Who said that? More details on page 5, but one more rider. Will sanction erring members, NBA. So you have the CJN and the NBA looking inwards, as it were, to correct what some people have described as an anomaly in the judiciary. Right under the big picture, you see Borno leaders demand stringent profiling of repentant Boko Haram members. That has been in the news for days now. It's on page 6, and the governor has been speaking. And now you have Borno leaders also giving their opinion on this one, page 6. And under that, this might interest a lot of people involved in the cryptocurrency market, right? CBN releases guidelines for e-Naira. So, page 14, let's know what you think about that, by the way. You can send us a mail. I think it's October, meant to kickstart in October, the e-Naira. So, let's know your thoughts on that one, the e-Naira. Of course,
I wonder what the value to the other one would be. Would it be any different from the real?
Well, it's a blockchain. Things happen, right? Blockchain gives you another world of possibilities entirely. So, maybe this might even be a game changer.
It will be interesting, who knows, to see how that plays out.
Oh, yes. So let's know. Let's find out what you think. Under the nameplate, you see that one we talked about, the missing persons highest in Africa. Nigeria records 22,000. ICRC says almost 23,000. But clearly this is a major challenge. There's sports on the back page of the paper. Well, let's leave it there for the Daily Trust.
And then take a look at Vanguard newspaper next. Q2 GDP report. Experts kick as FG defends sensible borrowings. Okay, I guess we can't see that, so I'm going to have to move on to, well, the one that we can. Well, if we're going to take a look at Leadership newspaper, it's also on a similar matter.
Yeah.
Conflicting court orders. CJN moves to save judiciary, summons 6 judges, 6 chief judges. That's what they highlight here today as the main story on the front page of Leadership newspaper today. And then you equally see some of the writers. NJC gets mandates to clean up mess in rivers, Anambra, Kebbi, Jigawa, Cross River, Imo, to discipline erring judges. And then you see SANs commend CJN for acting swiftly. I think that's the expression of swiftly, but we'll examine that and see if in what context. So you never really know. U.S. to help Nigeria unmask terrorism financiers. It's a big one.
Oh yes.
You know, I think the previous government had spoken about how they wanted to expose the sponsors of Boko Haram, and many were looking forward to that, hoping that that was going to happen. But even recently, okay, well, there you go. That's what you see right now on the front page of Leadership today.
Now that the challenges, you've had governors also say, we know people responsible for, is it banditry or is it the violence in the state? And they say, we're going to expose them. And I wonder what has been done about that. Not one, not 2 governors have said that same thing, almost the same way that we know the people responsible for that.
You know, why this is a little curious is that during the NSAS probe, look at all that transpired in terms of how they traced some funds and persons who were said to be funds, and they've named some of these people, you know, vigorously. And then you just thought, so couldn't the same measure, the same strategy, the same templates have been applied to this, which has been on for what, a decade now?
And you know, they move swiftly at that point. I mean,
Very
that's why
swift.
They freeze the accounts. They get an expert.
Very swift.
It's interesting, we're talking about the expert here on that.
So
and they
how
freeze the
come?
account and...
So why is the same thing not happening now? Why do we still keep asking questions as to, you know, what's going on? Well, you equally see Otom Akume at war over emergency rule. Accounts for 500 billion naira allocation. Minister tells governor. Explain 2 billion naira missing from Benue coffers. Otom fires back. So you get to see that back and forth on the front page of the paper here today. And then they also have that story about the e-naira. CBN hires what? Bid Inc. for pilot scheme. So who knows? At the end of the day, well, perhaps one shouldn't get ahead of oneself. We'll just wait and see what happens to the e-naira. And well, sounds optimistic though, but that's the leadership today.
Let's move on to Nigerian News Direct. Leads with the PDP. Well, looks at it from that PDP ABGA crisis angle. Mixed reactions trail summon of 6 chief judges. Rubani commends CJN over summon as Bewaji clarifies NJC CJN roles over judges' conduct. So, I mean, we all saw this coming. It's something that concerns the judiciary, where you have different arguments, contend. That's what I mean. Essentially, that's the profession, right? So you'll always hear different angles to this particular one.
That's the way it works.
Oh yes.
If it doesn't work that way, so what's the point of the
profession? So it's a page 2 read of Nigerian News Direct. Quite interesting one, but I think the big picture for everyone should perhaps be the same. Yeah. We've seen a lot of dirt being thrown on the judiciary, and you wonder how much of confidence people still have when they see some of these, conduct. So it was important to at least put some measure in and ensure that these things don't continue. So I hope that's a big picture for everyone. You see, court extends order restraining AGF SSS from arresting Igbo. That's on top of the nameplate on the left-hand corner of Nigerian News Direct this morning. There's some other stories on the front page. Let me just take this one. Be more proactive and creative in security management, NGE. It's a page 21 read. Of course, security, always a big one. That's the Nigerian News Direct.
Well, I think we'll take the Vanguard now. Q2 GDP reports. Experts kick as FG defends sensible borrowings. FG borrowing sensibly to fund infrastructure, says Finance Minister Ahmed. Adds insecurity slowed down agri sector. I think the CBN and several other financial people have spoken up about the same thing, how this challenge, this insecurity is slowing down and affecting things. And so it's out there. I think anyone easily can tell this. So if it has slowed down agri sector, what about the huge impact? It means what? On food security, it will have an impact.
And food prices as well. I mean, they tell you that our inflation is driven by food inflation, which is driven by insecurity. So you hear a lot of people who have to transport food to different parts of the country saying that this is what they go through. This is how much they pay to non-state actors on the roads, as though...
and it's not new.
Oh, yes.
It's almost like an informal institution all by itself. So why is it that keeps happening? Well, could it be, someone was, just trying to, poke at one and says, look, it's just like asking, why do you think you have police checkpoints in some other areas? And when you feel you want to report certain things, in this minute, you get back there, everybody's gone.
Intelligence.
So, and then you see debt situation not sustainable. Ex-LCCI boss, debt servicing crowding out funds for development, says Varsity Don. Nigeria neck deep in financial mess, says High Cap Securities boss. So that's the big one on the front page of Vanguard today. But equally instructive here is we will shut down Nigeria if there's hike in fuel price, electricity tariff, Labour warns. We'll make of that what you will. But on the back page, there's Vanguard Sports, World Cup qualifiers, Osimhen and Ndidi, and Acho Iwobi. Others arrive for Liberia clash. So hopefully should be a good matchup for the Super Eagles.
Oh, yes.
Even if they want to roar, it's allowed.
If the Eagles want to roar.
Whatever they want to do.
We don't mind that.
Do what you need to do. The Eagles.
Let's just win that match.
Just make us happy.
Absolutely. Well, the Daily Times newspaper has this one. Why non-oil sector GDP is growing. That's from the finance minister. Says FG addressing concerns of manufacturers. I think that has been a major talking point. And MBS projects 5% growth at the end of 2021. So it seems the MBS seeing us maintaining this momentum. It sounds like a tongue twister there. So 5% growth at the end of the year. So I imagine that we have to do more than 5% in the coming quarter. So the average will be 5%, right? And if we did 0.5, previous one, 5% now, we need to do more so we can average 5% at the end of the year. So we look forward to that. I mean, it's good news, right, to have our economy grow, and more importantly, to have the quality of life of people grow as well. That's quite important. You see this one on politics. INEC receives 3.3 million applications in 9 weeks. That's CVR. So clearly a lot of people are rushing for this, and it's good. It's really good. And I don't want people to just take it for identification purposes, so they have some form of ID to show. It is for you to vote at the end of the day to choose our leaders. And
they need to understand that there's a process when you go out there to vote.
Oh, yes.
So you need to be able to, quote unquote, stand the heat. Not just getting the card. Yes, it's a good step to get the card, but you need to also know that if you get the card without using the card, it's a huge
disservice.
Yeah, I mean, if you see it that way, then you'll make that desired impact that you've long waited for. Who knows?
Well, that's Daily Trust for you. Or the Daily Times, not the Daily Trust.
Okay, so which one do we have next then?
Do we have a Guardian?
Okay, so there you go. That is it. We'll look at some of the dailies here today. We're back in a moment. Don't go away. All right, welcome back. Well, we're going to be discussing the conflicting court orders. The CJN is disturbed by this, and so yesterday he summoned the chief judges of Rivers, Kebbi, Cross River, Anambra, Jigawa, and Imo to an emergency meeting to explain the current situation. Now, in the last couple of days, different blocks of the People's Democratic Party secured court orders restraining the party chairman and the acting chairman of the party from occupying the chairmanship position at separate times. A part of the invitation letter reads, if I could just go ahead and quote that, my attention has been drawn to media reports to the effect that some courts of coordinate jurisdictions were granting conflicting ex parte orders on the same subject matter. It has become expedient for me to invite you for a detailed briefing on the development. Well, our correspondent also gathered that the meeting between the CJN and the heads of courts concerned is a prelude to a larger NJC meeting likely to hold next week. So we're keeping a tab on that and to get more details. Well, that is all we'll be discussing today, and we're starting off in Abuja. Makwa.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, welcome to Abuja Studios. We have with us this morning Mr. Ebun Oluwadegborua, who's a senior advocate of Nigeria. Well, you might observe that the case in point which Chamberlain cited there, that of the PDP, has not been the only one. That of Anambra is also a case in point. So I'm wondering, sir, I welcome you to our studios in Abuja this morning, what you made of the CJN's intervention in this particular matter. Is it a little late, or would you say it's coming right on time?
Well, I think that, good morning, Mokwe and fellow Nigerians. I think that it's a bag of mixed feelings in terms of the intervention of the Chief Justice of Nigeria. And I say mixed feelings because when a judge is seized of the facts of a case, that judge is supposed to be dominus litis, to have full powers to decide the case without recourse to any interference from any quarter whatsoever. However, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, being the chairman and the head of the National Judicial Council, has the responsibility under the Constitution, along with other members of the NJC, for the discipline, promotion, and appointment of judicial officers. So to that extent, he has supervisory jurisdiction over judges, but it has to be limited to the extent to which it's a matter that is not meant to interfere directly in the discharge of the functions of judicial officers. So we have to be careful. It's desirable that indeed what is going on in the judicial sector in respect of Anambra and the position of the PDP be put under some kind of supervision. But at the same time, we must not create the impression that a judge is answerable in the discharge of his duties to any particular person. The judge is answerable to God, is answerable to his conscience, is answerable to law, subject to provisions of law relating to discipline. And so that's why I say it's a bag of mixed feelings. And I think it's commendable on the part of the Chief Justice of Nigeria. But you will note that this trend is not something that is new. Mm-hmm. And indeed, if you trace the history of this kind of conduct.
Which one of the trends now? The granting of
ex parte orders. Okay. It is to be laid at the feet of the government. A government is responsible for the abuse that is going on now. Because if you recall the history of Nigeria, even for the Chief Justice of Nigeria himself, you remember the circumstance that brought him into office. The immediate past Chief Justice of Nigeria was removed from office through an ex parte order filed by the government. I mean, somebody who had been in office for such a long time, and the procedure for removing him is in the Constitution, is that he has to go through the Senate. And the person was removed through an ex parte order. And not just that, you recall even in 1993, when Nigeria had the freest election in our history in this country, and we were rejoicing and thanking God, Muslim ticket, voted for by everybody in Nigeria, at midnight, a judge prompted by the federal government under the military then, annulled that election around midnight. And recently, you also recall that while resident doctors were on strike, and there was a negotiation going on, the Federal Ministry of Health went clandestinely to National Industrial Court to obtain an ex parte order. So really, I mean, you see, the trend is that it is the government that dictates what citizens will follow. Leadership is important. So indeed, what the people are doing is they're copying it from government. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that both the NBA and NJC are standing up to challenge this. But I think that the real culprit in this matter is the government.
I think it's very important to state or to try and differentiate, because there are certain words we've both used now. We've used the word intervention, and you've also talked about interference. You know, you've in terms of describing how you feel about the intervention. I don't know whether to use intervention now or interference, but because they connote two different things. They carry two different meanings, even though they could be the same action that you're describing. So in this instance, would you say that the action of the chief judge, would you say it's an interference or is it an intervention?
Well, to the extent that it's meant to exercise the powers of the National Judicial Council, the CJN being the head of that council, it could be permitted under the law, especially under the Constitution. But if this intervention is, as the Chief Justice of Nigeria, making an attempt to control the way and manner in which individual judges exercise their discretion, that will not be welcome at all. Because indeed, once a judge, because, you know, we've been fighting for independence of the judiciary. Mm-hmm. What that means is that once a judge is sitting on a case, he should not be subject to any extraneous intervention, whether from the CJN, whether from the governor, or whether from anybody whatsoever. The judge should sit down based on the cold facts of the case before him and decide on it according to his conscience and according to law. Mm-hmm. So to that extent, we must draw some line between the intervention of the Chief Justice of Nigeria and so that it does not get to the level of interference. It is to ensure that, looking at the circumstances of these cases, I mean, a judge in Rivers State granted an ex parte order, purportedly removing, or at least removing or stopping the chairman of the People's Democratic Party from parading himself as the chairman of the party. I mean, and it became a matter of national knowledge. Everybody in Nigeria knew that such an event had happened. So judges are permitted to take judicial notice of events going on in Nigeria. So to that extent, it will have been proper for all those who are concerned or affected by such order to go before that same court. Because the judiciary system is so wonderfully transparent, such that there is always room for you to challenge whatever order any judge has given, even ex parte. And if you do so ex parte and there's no remedy, then you go to the next level.
Because I was just about to draw your attention to the other instances which you enumerated, which proved somewhat controversial, and raised some debate amongst lawyers and even amongst ordinary Nigerians in the space. You've even gone back in history to as far back as 1993 to show how government itself has also used ex parte orders. Now, some people will say that there might be nothing wrong with using ex parte orders. The question is when they begin to come from courts of coordinate jurisdiction and they are given conflicting orders. Do you agree with that?
I agree to some extent. That the jurisdiction granted to courts in respect of ex parte orders arises in very extraordinary circumstances. And it did for us within the legal profession, is to say situations that become so urgent. For instance, somebody is to be executed and the person has an appeal pending. And if the sentence of execution is carried out, I mean, his life may not be available to pursue that appeal. In such circumstances, you could ask the court to say, please wait. In fact, we have circumstances in England when we were in law school in those days, when we were told that, a building was to be demolished and a judge was approached for an ex parte injunction. While in the bathroom, he dictated an order of injunction to his registrar or secretary to type it out and stop the demolition. So if there are circumstances that if you don't stop it immediately, irreparable loss may occur, then you could give ex parte order. It's proper. But because you are doing so behind the person affected, we normally do say that you exercise sufficient restraint, especially in cases in which nothing so irreparable will happen. The office of the chairman of PDP have been in existence since 2017. Almost 4 or so years. Nothing could be so urgent, nothing could be so extraordinary that to warrant a judge to sit in Rivers and ask the occupant of that office not to parade himself or to leave office. Nothing, in my view, honestly, with due respect to the court where that order came from. So the normal thing would be to say, go and put him on notice. Let me hear from him. Okay. Because the circumstance is not so urgent.
What I distill from what you're saying is that apart from the fact that we have been getting conflicting orders, the use of ex parte has also been abused. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, it's been abused. And, because the reason why we are quite alarmed about what is going on is that once you get used to this kind of circumstance, because when you say injunction, injunction is to stop something. It's something that you just became aware of, maybe not like last week. But for somebody who has been occupying office since 2017, you can't say you are just getting to know about it. So we don't use ex parte orders to stop what has been completed. The man has been sworn in, he's been given mantle of office, he's been presiding over executive council meeting, he's been doing things to the knowledge of even the international community, how much less Rivers State. So when you want to grant such an ex parte or you are requested to grant such an order, it will be necessary for the person presiding over such court to exercise restraint to ensure that it's not abused. Because in June 2020, the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court had cause to issue a memo to all judges within that court on the need for restraint on granting ex parte orders. The National Judicial Council itself has made it a policy that ex parte orders should be granted in rare circumstances. In fact, in matters involving property, in matters involving cases that are so urgent that if you don't do something, there will be irreparable damage done.
So there is practice guidelines for the issue.
Oh, there is.
Of ex parte
and
order.
it doesn't cover this kind of circumstance we are seeing in Kebbi, that we are seeing in Calabar, that we are seeing in River State. No. When you want to grant an ex parte order, is to say, I can't reach the person. If I get to reach that person before the process of serving, before the process of coming back to court, some damage will have happened. Maybe, like I gave an example, maybe there's a ship that is in Nigeria, and there's a controversy concerning money, concerning ownership, and if you don't do something urgently, the ship may go back and sail, and then you will not have opportunity to resolve the dispute. So you may get to court and say, please, the ship has just battered today, and will be leaving next week. So please stop or arrest the ship while we resolve the dispute. Those are circumstances which we recognize in law. Or somebody has just served you a notice to say, we're going to demolish Channels Television, God forbid, tomorrow or next tomorrow. By the time you file your case and put the person who wants to come and demolish on notice, you probably have come to carry out such threat. So you say, please, in the meantime, maintain the status quo, so that let me hear the reason why you want to demolish. But surely not something in which you have gotten to know that the person had occupied office since 2017, and then you approach the court. And it's not so bad, so annoying that such an ex parte order was granted. But that upon the grant of such ex parte order, somebody else again in Kebbi State, knowing that such an order exists, then granted another order that the person should assume office and resume. The chairman went to the office and resumed. And as they were about to hold the meeting, another court in Calabar, knowing that there was an order granted in Rivers, there was another order granted in Kebbi, another court in Calabar then granted another order, stopping him from assuming office, from presiding over meetings. So it became like a caricature. It was putting the judiciary in bad light, as if our house could not be put in order. And I think that's what has warranted the intervention of the CJN. But like I said, it must be an intervention that is not interpreted as maybe giving judges the impression that they have to be answerable to the chief judge in the exercise of their responsibilities, which is not the case.
Well, what I also find interesting is the fact that, because oftentimes they say, oh, the judges do not have to take cognizance of what is happening in the media space. However, in this particular instance, it would seem that the CJN has taken this action based on information from the media, and it would seem that judges are now required somewhat, because as you pointed out, when the ex parte was given in Port Harcourt, the other courts could not have pretended that they hadn't heard the order as given in Port Harcourt, for instance. Does this change what should not happen? Because sometimes we hear that, oh, the judge can only act based on what is before it. It cannot, give more than what was requested or take into cognizance other circumstances around it. Is this changing for whatever reason with regards to ex parte motions?
No, it's not changing at all, Mokwe. What we say is clear. A judge is supposed to be neutral. That's why you see the eye of the logo of the lady. There's a cloth covering the eye of the logo of justice. In other words, it's blind. It doesn't recognize race, class, gender, or status. So it will just determine the case based on the facts presented before the court. That is sacrosanct. And I don't think we should depart from that. But the judge, however, is also entitled to take judicial notice of certain occurrences. I've been in court where a judge will say, well, I'm aware that my learned brother is handling a matter of this nature. I do not think it's proper for me to go into this case. Let me refer this file back to the chief judge and find out whether the facts are the same as the one being handled by my learned brother judge. And the reason is because courts are not supposed to give different and conflicting decisions in respect of the same subject matter. The same subject matter of the office of the PDP chairman is what is in River State. And to that extent, once a judge comes in contact with a file requesting for an order that is contrary to what is going on in River State, is entitled to take judicial notice and say, learned counsel, could you please address me concerning this matter? Are you aware whether there's a case like this pending in any other court in Nigeria? A lawyer is a minister before the court. He's entitled to tell the judge whether he's aware. If he's not aware, he will say so. Indeed, nowadays...
Can he feign ignorance? What if he says he's not aware, or he or she says, I'm not aware, and there is actually one?
Well, it's left for people who are aggrieved to show that, he may have been aware. Otherwise, if you say he's not aware and he's genuinely not aware, there's nothing anybody can do about it. But the point I wanted to make is this. When this thing became an embarrassment to the judiciary, the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court also amended the rules of that court, and I think it should be done nationwide. If you want to file a case in the Federal High Court today, you are requested to file an affidavit separate from the course of action which you have brought to the court to ascertain that there is no multiplicity of action. To your knowledge, as a lawyer, as a party bringing this case before the court, that there is no other case, to your knowledge, in respect of the same subject matter pending, to your knowledge. You will swear that affidavit on oath, so that if it later turns out that you are aware and then you have come to mislead the court, it can be a ground to move that court to dismiss that case, or even to commence criminal proceedings against the deponent to such an affidavit who may have lied on oath. So that should be replicated in all judicial divisions and indeed in all courts, so that we can sanitize the system, so that we can save ourselves of this embarrassment about what is going on in the judiciary currently.
It would seem that the judiciary saw this coming because from what we understand, there was a circular issued by the Federal High Court talking about the grant of ex parte orders, hearing of cases from outside immediate territorial jurisdiction. And this circular was said to have been written sometime on the 24th of June last year, that's 2020, and it was addressed to all the honorable judges in the Federal High Court. It's saying something to the effect that it is of common knowledge that elections will be held in some states in Nigeria in the nearest future. The normal party conventions and primaries with attendant political maneuvering have already commenced amongst various political parties, which very often culminate in the institution of cases in the courts. In this regard, your lordships are strongly advised not to grant any ex parte injunctive orders in any political matter brought before your lordships. Now, it would seem that this has not been adhered to. Do you think that the Federal High Court had any powers in any case to be able to enforce this particular circular? Was it an advisory? Was it an instruction? Was it something that could carry say, consequences as a result of them violating, as the judges, violating the circular?
Well, I think that the intention was quite commendable. In terms of trying to sanitize the system. But of course, like I said earlier, it's doubtful whether the administrative head of a court, chief judge, could, in any administrative capacity, restrain the exercise of judicial powers by individual judges, because the power of a judge is as granted by the Constitution and also granted by law. So what the Chief Judge of the Federal Court has done is purely administrative, to ensuring that, we avoid the cases whereby we have conflicting and inconsistent cases or judgments in respect of the same subject matter. And the reason is very simple. If an election is to hold in Lagos, and there is dispute concerning the election or the primary election or the choice of candidate, there is no reason why a case concerning that matter should find itself in Abuja. Because the election is holding in Lagos. The candidates are to contest the election in Lagos. The constituency is in Lagos. So ordinarily, such a case should be filed in Lagos. But I think that the solution to this is to fund the judiciary and invest. Because the chief judge is himself the person assigning cases. So if a case had been filed yesterday, maybe to close down Channels Television, and I go there today to file another case, the system should prompt the administrative judge who is to assign the case to say, a case like that yesterday was assigned. So he will know the judge to which is assigned. But our system is manual. So there's no way you can track, the movement of cases to be able to know that a case concerning the office of PDP chairman was filed yesterday and is being filed today, is being filed tomorrow, so that the computer itself will ordinarily have prompted you to know that such a suit is existing. And I think that's what the chief judges should do, to make sure the system is automated to the extent that a subject matter of a suit that has been filed can be retained in such a system to prompt itself in case there is another suit filed in respect of the same subject matter. So it's a matter of funding, I think, and we can achieve that.
Yeah, but what I find interesting is the fact that the judiciary already saw this. They already predicted that this usually happens around political seasons. And if you look at the matters that are involved right now, they're all political matters. In the matter of the PDP and also in the matter in Anambra State, the forthcoming elections in Anambra State, I think the party has been most affected, even though, yes, the PDP in Anambra has also had its fair share. But APGA has felt the heat of this one as well. So if the Federal High Court, which is the court usually involved in this, and in some instances, state high courts are also involved in this, and they already saw this coming, did they really have any powers to be able to enforce anything to the contrary? Let me put it that way.
Oh, yes. The Chief Judge of the Federal High Court had done it, to my knowledge, when there was controversy concerning the composition of the board of the NDDC. And various cases were being filed in the various oil-producing states, in Calabar, in Delta, in Ondo. The Chief Judge issued a circular to all the judges and asked that all the files relating to the board of the NDDC be brought to Abuja so that they can be coordinated and avoid a situation in which another is being made in Port Harcourt, another order is being made in Akure, another order is being made in Abuja. And that was done. And that was how we were able to arrest that situation, to avoid the embarrassment. When this matter came up, it was possible for the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court to call for all the cases and be able to look at them and decide to send them back to the judicial division where the election is to take place. That is Anambra. And then secondly is this. Immediately this matter came up, appeals were filed. One of them was heard, and the judge or justices of the Court of Appeal berated the lawyers involved in those cases and recommended sanctions, both for the lawyers and the judges. If steps had been taken to enforce those recommendations by the Court of Appeal, what is happening now will not happen. Secondly, and that's the reason why I said government is to blame. Now, if this is done by, the cases are filed by government, for instance, the removal of the former CJN or the annulment of June 12 election, if sanctions had been granted against the people who perpetrated such ex parte orders or system, it will serve as a deterrence for other lawyers. But when the Minister of Health goes to National Industrial Court and procures an ex parte order and nothing happens, because government has power to protect the people that is using for those systems, you cannot then wake up one day and be punishing lawyers who are representing private citizens. So the government should set the example.
Let me quickly put this in. Now that the state high courts are also involved in this matter, we see that it is the chief judges of the states that have been summoned. What powers do you think that the CJN can exercise in this regard?
There's none. With all due respect, the Constitution does not allow the Chief Justice of Nigeria to dictate to a judge in the exercise of the performance of judicial duties. However, the National Judicial Council, which is the body that appoints and disciplines judicial officers, can issue queries, can summon them, can ask for explanation. And if the explanations are not satisfactory, it can proceed to exercise disciplinary powers and recommend to the governor of that state for the removal or discipline, suspension of that particular judge. Other than that, we cannot, within our system, encourage the Chief Justice of Nigeria from Abuja to be dictating to what happened to cases in Lagos or in Port Harcourt. So this excess of power, it should be purely administrative and it should not be encouraged. Otherwise, it will come to a situation whereby maybe another Chief Justice of Nigeria may abuse the system. Maybe he has a family dispute somewhere around Lagos and then use his power to ask the judge not to intervene. So we must draw a line between trying to avoid the embarrassment to the judiciary and then the independence of the judiciary itself in judges not being subject to anybody in the discharge of their duties except according to law.
Are you happy with the intervention of the MBA as well? They have written a statement in this regard, and they say they have noticed with dismay, those are their words, the happenings in the judiciary with regards to ex parte motion. I don't know what your take is, and when you look at the fact that the people who actually approach the courts are sometimes senior lawyers, and they are, of course, members of the MBA.
Yeah, one of the beauty of our profession is that it's self-regulatory and it cleanses itself. There is a body called the Body of Benchers, which has disciplinary power over lawyers. It is that body that calls lawyers to the bar and grants you license to practice. So the Body of Benchers has an organization called Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee. So to that extent, NBA and indeed the legal profession has a responsibility when matters like this happen to refer cases like this to that particular body to ask the lawyers to explain the circumstances, how you got to know that a case is pending in Rivers, is pending in Kebbi, and then you go to Calabar again in respect of the same case. So it's a welcome development.
So it should go beyond press statements for the NBA?
Oh, it should. The NBA should refer this matter to the Legal Practitioner Disciplinary Committee.
Mr. Ebun Oluwadegboruwa, we have to thank you for your intervention. Yours is not an interference, certainly on this matter this morning. Thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts with us on this particular matter. Mr. Ebun Oluwadegboruwa is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Well, we'll take a break at this moment and we'll be back shortly with another perspective. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. Well, yes, continuing on that subject matter of the conflicting court orders, we've got Mr. John Aikpopo Martins, who is the first vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association, who joins us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program.
Yeah, good morning.
Well, we've seen the statement from the NBA. Part of it did say that as the prime defender of the integrity and independence of the judiciary, the NBA cannot and will not be a spectator whilst our hard-earned democracy is threatened by the venal acts of a few. So what is the thinking of the NBA in terms of how to address this problem?
Thank you very much. In that statement, the NBA made two very important points therein. The first is within the profession, within the bar, and the second has to do with the bench. The bar has to do with the lawyers, where the NBA said that we may have to put into process our disciplinary process with respect to lawyers, especially senior lawyers, who are involved in the filing of these cases in several jurisdictions, of course, in Nigeria, that has resulted into these conflicting orders of court, and that is giving the legal profession and the courts of justice a bad name. That is the first, that the NBA is ready now, willing to take up these disciplinary measures against erring lawyers. Then the second is to visit the CJN, who is the chairman of the Nigerian Judicial Council, because the Nigerian Judicial Council is in charge of the bench, that means the judges. NBA, we don't have a jurisdiction over them, we can't do anything. Therefore, it's our duty to ensure that we visit the proper body responsible for the discipline of judges, which is the NJC, and the Chief Justice of Nigeria, who is the chairman of that body, to interact with him on the need to put the judges who are involved in all these frivolous or conflicting orders under check. So those are the two issues that, or the two areas that the NBA wants to go, and that's the area that we can actually go beyond making a statement.
You know, this is not new. This action of which the CJN is concerned, and then the NBA equally concerned, because we do remember that in 2011, then chairman of INEC did reach out to the CJN saying, look, all of these ex parte orders that judges just gave just like that, it's a huge challenge. So it's been on for a while. How confident is the NBA that this time around, this may just be addressed and then it becomes history?
Well, it's a matter of the will on the part of the leadership of the Nigerian Bar Association and the leadership of the NJC to ensure and put through the points they have been making. It is true that this thing has been on for a long time, but probably in 2011, we had a different leadership of Nigerian Bar Association at that time. I won't know what they did at that time, but I can't remember anything was actually done. And at that time too, we had a different Chief Justice of Nigeria. So now you have two different leadership driving the two arms of the legal profession, i.e. the bench and the bar. For us at the Nigerian Bar Association, the will is there, and we are ready at this time to ensure that this malaise is put to to an end. If you recall, there was these issues that arose from the Anambra governorship election, where there were also conflicting orders, and justice of the Court of Appeal had to make a very strong suggestion on the need to discipline the parties or the lawyers involved. And from that point to pick it up, I remember that the NBA, we sent messages around that, see, some of these cases we are not involved, but lawyers are involved. If we can be availed with the processes, because it is very easy to say there are conflicting orders or what are fine, but it is extremely necessary to look at the processes to see really what was put before the judge before we can arrive at a holistic admonition that indeed the orders ought not to have been given. So we have actually put out a subtle message before that we need to have those processes so that we look at it critically and do the needful, but that was not done. But now that this particular one has come up, because the trending issue now that there was an order from the Degema High Court, there was an order from Benekebi High Court, there's an order again from a court in Cross River, all of them same issue. And it's not that the orders are conflicted that is really the initiating, but that expert orders were given in such a way as to as final orders. Like the NHRC was saying just now, injunctions are granted or to restrain an act from taking place. How do you restrain the chairman of a party who has been the chairman of a party for more than 2-3 years, who was lawfully elected and his election was never contested, and all of a sudden the court is saying that you are no longer the chairman of that party? It goes beyond just an order. There's something I really don't want to say on TV, but there's something that is not too good about it, and that's the reason why at this stage the NBA needs to do something, and that's the reason that statement was put out. But it took some time for the president to make that statement, because we wanted to be sure, we wanted to see exactly what was going on, and we are now extremely very sure that things that are not supposed to be are not happening right in the legal profession, and it's our duty as defender of what we call it now, the bench, to ensure that these acts are put to stop immediately, or else the democracy, the whole country might just grind to halt and might collapse on our heads.
But you know, even last year, Honorable Justice Soho did also issue that circular reminding them that, look, this is a matter that had been previously talked about, and then how come it's still going on? And do you think that perhaps there might have been a weakness previously within the disciplinary procedure, and that is why these things go on?
Well, if I want to tell you where these issues are coming from, it's not just disciplinary procedure, it's also an appointment procedure. And when we were the last strike by Jusun, when this issue of judicial autonomy was being discussed, I was asked this question severally on TV as to why are the governors interested in not giving the judiciary autonomy, and most people don't look back to that issue. And I said that, and I'm saying it again now, that the appointment of judges has a lot to do with what is going on in the judiciary. Because if you owe your appointment to a godfather somewhere, i.e. a governor somewhere, when that governor needs your attention and he brings a case before your court, you are going to grant him what he wants. So we have to go back to the appointment of judges. The process of appointment of judges must be seriously overhauled in this country, or else we are just talking and go back. And the funny thing is that these judges that are in the High Court are also the judges that are being appointed to the Court of Appeal. So you find out that where there are about 3 or 4 judges that have been appointed in another hand way from the state high courts and they get to the Court of Appeal, that hegemony is perpetuated for a very long time. So this problem goes beyond discipline. Now, why the question you ask, why are they not properly disciplined? If you recall, the president of the Nigerian Bar Association made a statement some time ago that he was at the NJC for the appointment of judges of the Court of Appeal, and he was very shocked to see the type of person that will be appointed. Again, those persons who have been appointed, the persons who are appointing them in the Nigerian Judicial Council are their godfather. So when this matter comes before them for discipline, they sort of sweep these matters under the carpet. So you find out that this issue of appointment of judges, who are the persons who are occupying the disciplinary body, i.e. the NJC itself, must be critically looked at. If not looked at, we are just bouncing around the same problem. It will recall. What we're going to have different actors but the same issues over and over again. So the appointment of judges, those who constitute the body of the NJC, which is the different body, must be looked at holistically, or else we are saying the same thing over and over again. 15 years down the line, we should be saying the same thing.
Well, you know, that is a matter which we've consistently highlighted. But how is the NBA planning to approach that?
Well, this, first and foremost, the NBA is, if you look at the constitution, our representative in the Nigerian Judicial Council can only speak when the issue of appointment is being discussed. But when the issue of discipline is being discussed, they don't allow them to speak. So first and foremost, we found out that the NBA does not have a say on the discipline of judges, because it's a constitutional issue. So now that we are in the process of amendment, we have made our suggestion to the Constitutional Amendment Committee of the National Assembly on the need to look at the constitution of the NJC, and at the state level, the Judicial Service Commission of the JSC of the several states. But if the National Assembly, if they cannot see what we are saying, then this problem will remain. So it needs, first and foremost, it needs constitutional amendment to be able to have an answer to this issue. The only thing we can do is to advocate, and we have been advocating. Now, one other thing I think the NBA should do is the fact that we have one of the major issues in Nigeria is that now we are complaining about the conflicting or the dangerous orders from the Benikebi, from the Tegema, and from the Cross River. Now nobody is petitioning. That is a major issue. Now, if nobody petitions the NJC, how is NJC going to sit over the issues at the end of the day? So we found out that the NJC itself, they also need to have the petitions before them. And I think the role NBA can play here is for the NBA itself to take upon itself to petition these judges. And that is the next step we are going to look at to ensure that these issues will not go on and on. That's why the fact that we may not be able to we may not be able to influence exactly how they are disciplined, but at least we can put petitions before the NJC. Then, as with respect to the lawyers who are involved, but I want to say this over and over again, the judges are just 30% of the problem. To me, I believe the lawyers are 70% of the problem. Because when the clients brief you, it is your duty to inform and advise that client properly. So when your client says, "Look, I need an injunction by all means," it is your duty to tell that your client, for example, in the case I went to Benikebi, look, there is an issue already in Degema. Why not go and let us go and file or defend that case properly instead of going to Kebbi State to get another order? Then from Kebbi, they went to Uyo to get another order. It takes a lawyer to prepare processes. It takes a lawyer to put those processes before the judge. Forget that the judge also have the right to look at it. Let's not look at the judge side. I want to look at the lawyer side from now. So if the lawyers are not preparing processes, and who are the lawyers drafting the orders? But usually the judges don't draft the orders. They grant orders as couched and by lawyers on the processes. So if lawyers know, you know very well, extremely very well, that the same subject matter, the same parties, the same purpose is to be served in Degema, why not go to Benikebi and put the judge under pressure by filing the processes before him? So those are the issues. So the lawyers themselves, we are going to look, the president has said in his statement that we are going to look critically at that. I'll be very sure in a few days or weeks from now, we are going to take these actions up, but there need to be a shift on how we have been doing things for Nigeria to move forward. Because we owe this country a duty to ensure that this country does not collapse on our head. And the way we are going, it is sure that we are getting close. Because for the first time during this NSAS riot, courts were invaded and burnt down. That's the first time I heard that in Nigeria, that there was a riot or demonstration that the public, the mob, have to go to court houses. It shows that the people are saying that there's no justice in Nigeria. And when the judges and the lawyers are telling the world,
I mean, some of the questions you raised are questions a lot of Nigerians are asking as well, and they'll look to the NBA and, of course, the NJC to get answers to those questions. I mean, why do we keep having these issues? But you spoke about petition, and I'll first like to explore that. I mean, when you say there's no justice in Nigeria, some will question you, especially being a legal practitioner. I mean, you've you've sought justice for clients, I believe. So perhaps you might want to contextualize that. But in terms of the petitions, I recall last year, you recall the APC actually had this same issues with the former chairman, Adams Oshiomhole, a particular court order telling him to step aside less than 24 hours after another court in Kano, saying that they should even get security to take him back to office. So that was also an issue. And I recall that at that time, a particular legal practitioner, Andrew Mwata, actually petitioned the NJC concerning the one in Kano, I think Justice Alagoa. And perhaps that's somewhere to start from. I don't know if that particular petition was vacated, but really, what should be the process when, these petitions are put up to the NJC? Should it just happen behind the scenes? Aren't people meant to know what came out of it, except it was vacated? What do you think?
Yes, first of all, I didn't say there's no justice in Nigeria. I say people's perception is that there's no justice in Nigeria. That's why courts were pondering that. Now, on the issue of the dictionary issues in NJC, for example, as the Oshiomhole's issue as a case study, like I said before, the appointment into that body, the NJC, has to be overhauled. Because, like I said, and I want to repeat it, that if we have godfathers in the system, and these petitions come before the godfather, whether in the NJC or wherever, what is going to be the likely outcome of those petitions? Now, in a situation where it's a national issue, I want to have expected that petition will be treated with dispatch, so that the country will know exactly that the disciplinary body has actually done its job and give confidence that the system works. But when a petition has been filed against a judge, it takes 3 years to resolve. Then people forget, and the perception that remains is that nothing was done. And I want to put the question, I want to throw that challenge back to the press. The press in Nigeria, they seem to forget issues. When an issue is trending, they take it up, and the next thing, they forget about it. They never go back to do a retrospection to say what happened in that matter and bring it up again for discussion, thereby putting the persons who want to bury that issue, putting them under pressure. But you seem to forget is that everybody just move ahead. That is one. Two, the Nigerians just seem to have a way of letting
just a moment, Mr. Popo Martins. On that particular one, you should thank us for at least reminding you of that particular petition, which may have been forgotten. So I think to that extent, there should be some commendation because it seems to have been forgotten, but we brought it to you to remind you.
Yes, what I'm saying now, that I cannot recall that anything happened in that petition because first and foremost, I'm an individual person, I'm a private person. It takes the press usually to let us know what has happened or what is happening in several places. But that matter has not been taken up by the pressmen. So for us, we have no information. The NJC does not report to the NBA. When they discipline a judge, they don't send us a copy of their decision. So except the press reports it, we will not know. That is one. Then second, on the issue of disciplinary bodies of Nigeria, the LPDC, let me give an example. The LPDC disciplines a lawyer, but most people believe that it's the NBA that disciplines lawyers. NBA does not discipline lawyers. It's a legal practitioner disciplinary committee that disciplines lawyer. Now, when petitions are sent to these bodies, what happens? It takes a very long time for this petition to be treated. So people have this belief that the NBA is protecting its members. Let me give a classic example. When the chairman of the what do you call it, tribunal now?
CCT, the Code of Conduct Tribunal.
Yes, when he had that altercation with somebody, a private citizen in the Barnes Plaza, it took myself and the welfare secretary of the Nigerian Bar Association to write petitions. Since April, we wrote that petition. Till now, we have not had a feedback. We have written back to say, look, this matter is a matter of national importance. People want to know exactly what has happened to this man. What has happened? Up to now, we have not had a feedback. So you find out that the disciplinary mechanism in the profession, to the best of for my person, it is not working at full speed to ensure that the persons or the persons involved or the public are aware of the fact that when there is a transgression by a lawyer or a judge, that there is punishment, or sanctions follow. So that is something the legal profession has to work on, i.e. the NJC and the Legal Practitioners Act, to ensure that when this petition, particularly the ones that have national coloration, that they are treated with dispatch, so that persons will know that if any man or any lawyer or judge who misbehaves can be sanctioned. But the problem we have in Nigeria is that at the end of the day, this thing just go on, and everybody seems to forget. And I want to again use this opportunity to say, look, pressmen, always ensure that that at some time go back and pick up these issues again and bring train these issues again, so that the people, the persons who are responsible for discipline are put under pressure.
Well, I was thinking you say pressmen should take the matter to court as well. I mean, there's as much as we can do. We report the issues, put it out there, and of course, we'll look forward to the lawyers, legal practitioners to pick it up. But I mean, challenge taken. But let's talk about this invitation now to an emergency meeting. So we're expecting the Chief Justice of Rivers, Kebbi, Cross River, Anambra, Jigawa, and Imo State. Some will say, what about the ones in the past? For example, the one in Kano, which I referenced with the APC matter and the rest. And some would even say it dates back to 1985. But maybe that's a matter for another day. But what kind of action are you expecting? I remember the senior advocate we had earlier saying that there's a thin line between interference and what's the other one he said? But the point is, how do you expect this to be handled such that it serves as a deterrence? And just like you said, so we don't keep discussing this in the next 15 years. I mean, from 1985, 1993, last year, this year, we keep having the same issue. So what kind of action are you expecting from the NJC this time around?
Yes, I listened to the NHRC and I agree with all his submissions. The CJN does not have the power to call judges to come and on issues that are pending before them. That is Barris' powers, and that will look at interference. But if you look at this case, the CJN did not invite the judges. He invited the chief judges of the states where these things happened. So there's a difference. So I think it is proper to invite them for. It's like let's have a meeting. Let's put this in perspective. What is going on? What are you doing to curtail what is going on in your jurisdiction? Because in Nigeria, by the constitution, every state judiciary is independent of the federal judiciary, that's even the CJN, and is independent of another state. So a court in Degema, for example, in Rivers State, is not expected to know what a court in Cross River is doing. And it's not bound by the judgment or the orders of a coordinate jurisdiction of another state, because they have equal footing. So what he has done is what I call an advisory meeting. Let's put our head together. What is going on? And I think it's proper in the circumstances of this case, since he didn't call the judges themselves. Then the NJC, in this case, I don't wish that they have to wait for a petition to come. I think the NJC on its own generate a query to the judges to come and explain why they have to give such ex parte orders. For me, it's not granting ex parte order that is my problem, because if you don't grant ex parte orders, there will be chaos too. But it's the nature and the type of ex parte orders they gave. There was no urgency in the matter, number one. Number two, the ex parte order was not to preserve, but rather was to spoil, was to put one party who was not even in the position of power in power. How can you say that a chairman who has been acting, I keep using that word, who has been in his office, who has occupied his office, all of a sudden you just pick another that is hereby removed, should no longer parade himself? That is not an interim order. That is not an injunction. That is a final order per se, and that is initiating, with due respect to the judge who gave that order. We have to say it the way it is. So it is not granting ex parte orders per se that is the issue. It's the nature of the ex parte order given. Because that order given settled the cases finally, and the right.
Okay, but Mr. Martins, if I could just ask you, when you say that the judge in this zone or this state is not expected to know what's happening in this other court, so is that to suggest that that's an excuse, or what if they then cite that, well, there's no way I can know? How is that still tenable? Because I think it's been mentioned at some point in some judicial fora that they need to know what is going on in other places.
Let me put it like this. You see, we are lawyers and we act on technicalities, and that is the fault of the profession. Every lawyer, the fact that we are acting on technicality doesn't mean that we don't know what we are doing. Let me give an example. For the judge in Benin-Kebbi, obviously must have been informed that there is a matter in. When I say informed, and not by the processes before him, maybe he read it from news or whatever, that such an order was granted in Degema High Court, stopping the chairman of the party from parading himself. If you look at the order he granted, he said it is for him to continue in office. That word "continue" means that He knew that he had been put away, so he was trying to return him. So he had the knowledge. But if you take him before the NJC now, what's going to be his defense? He will say, first and foremost, I am in Degem, I am in Benekebi, I am not in River State. One. Secondly, the process before me did not mention, and I'm very sure the lawyers who have done that, they will not say in the processes before him, in the affidavit in support of the order, that such an order has been granted in Degema High Court, or such a case is pending before the High Court. By law, you don't expect that judge on his own to fish for facts. It is not done. But having regard to the fact that we are all Nigerians, and if we are Nigerians and we owe this country a duty, he ought to have known from the outside world. All he needed to do was to say, okay, I put, instead of granting the order, he said, put them on notice. Let's come and argue before me. It's not for him to have gone forward. So technically, he will have a defense. I must tell you that. Technically, because we have not seen the processes, but I am very sure that.
All right, as we wind down on this now, when you say, you know, the CJN inviting the CJs in those states, respective states, is he suggesting or is he holding the CJs responsible? Because CJs assign the cases to the judges and they tell you, well, the judges are solely responsible for their cases.
No, naturally, we don't know why he's going to discuss with them. So I don't want to speculate.
No, not that you have to speculate. Oh, are you still there? Oh dear. I think we lost him, but okay. Well, not just we're trying to speculate, because I mean the lawyers will always say, look, the CJs, when they get to such cases, they assign the cases to the judges. So if you invite the CJs, there's the limit to what the CJs can do. If they tell you, well, I only assign the cases, I'm not responsible though. So what then happens to the judges? So if they can't invite the judges because the cases are on. All right, Mr. Ikpokpo, let's wind down on this one. I was just making a point saying that isn't there a limit to what the CJN can tell the CJs if the CJs say, I only assign the cases to the judges?
Naturally, the CJs from these various states will say, I am personally not involved. The judge that gave the order, I don't know why I don't give the order. Let's look at the processes, or the petitions can be written against them. But I don't think that is the purpose why the CJN is calling them. It is for, they do an introspection. Let the bench itself have to sit down and talk to themselves. Obviously, that was what I think is the CJN called them for, because it does not have the power as a CJN to discipline any judge or to interfere in any case that is pending before it comes.
One more thing before we go. Can the judges in question be dismissed as at least an ultimate point to make to deter others?
Well, I will not say whether they can be dismissed or not, because you have to follow the process. There must be petition against them. The agency will have to try them, and if they are found guilty, then the agency should do the needful, either by way of dismissal or any other sanction. But as a person, if I were to sit in judgment over them and I look at the process and I find them liable for what they have done, it's a dismissal.
So one wonders how that will happen given the way judges are appointed, which you raised. So I guess we'll wait and see. But we do thank you for your time this morning, Mr. John Ikpokpo Martins, the first Vice President of the Nigerian Bar Association.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful.
Right, well, back in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. We've got Mr. Deji Doherty, who is the chairman of the People's Democratic Party in Lagos. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, you know, listening to that report, I mean, after the spokesperson did speak, then another court judgment came, and then several others, of which the CJN has now summoned the CJs of those states in question. So given all of what is playing out in your party, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just understanding that we've lost him, so we're trying to get that connection back. We're just trying to just build up, haven't seen how all of these things are playing out. So definitely, the party, they've got a job of work cut out for them to see how do they sort this out. So the thing is, I mean, how are they going to respond now in the wake of all of this summonings, and do they think they're on the right path? I know I have a feeling he said, look, don't worry about these things. Well, we're going to arrange ourselves a sort of
I think that's
as they always say.
That's a challenge for me. Well, not preempting what he would say, but I mean, some might have a mindset that this is part of the brand of politics we play in Nigeria, and I don't know, it's not good. I was referencing as far back as 1985. We had a CJN addressing, the bench that, you know what, this is not right. Imagine someone approaching the court to get an expert order to stop a whole school from doing a graduation ceremony just because of two people. Imagine someone approaching the court and stopping a community from getting connected to the power grid just because of one person. And, you know, at that time, it was a big deal. And then fast forward to 1993, what we have seen. And, you know, if you trace these things, especially the ones we've seen in recent time, political parties are, do I say major culprit?
Oh, yeah, they are. And as a matter of fact, I mean, we're getting to that time again. Building up to the 2023 elections, you get to see a lot and hear a lot. Well, yeah, some people describe this saying good. I think one of the dailies, they talk about swiftly. They use the word swiftly in terms of how this CJN has responded to it. But if you look at the history and how optimistic the NBA is this time, I think it will be interesting to see how all of these things play out. So, and then a lot is expected from the NBA by those who, given the way the voting, you know, in the NBA went, they expect the NBA leadership to maintain, put across, or have a certain position and a certain stance on certain things, because that's why they brought them there in the first place, to change certain things. So who knows what will happen, but it is indeed good that these things are being highlighted, because, I mean, if you don't talk about some of these things, some people may just continue. But if they talked about it as far as in the 80s, wow. I mean, for 2011, the INEC chairman at that time said, look, he was choked with his injunctions, but who knows?
You know what that does to INEC sometimes? I mean, we just saw the ABGA case. I mean, a statement was released, INEC had to retract and then now release another list and all, and that's not the first time we've had this. So generally, aside the fact that, I mean, we would understand how political parties think, such that things are escalated to this point. I mean, have they exhausted the internal party mechanisms? Do they think it looks good for their party as well?
Yeah.
But INEC as well, and even not just INEC, a lot of other people, they are confused. So they take one step today and they realize, no, it's not the right step. They take another step.
We don't know which one to obey. So they now, but you know, of equal importance is this issue that we've raised time and again, and thankfully, the NBA first vice president Lud spoke about that. I spoke to it when he says, look, the way judges are appointed, that is key. And if he says, look, they've got political backing, well, if a governor facilitates a judge coming in, you do what he wants. That's what he said. And that is in the judiciary. Remember, a similar matter also plays itself out concerning policing. So if they facilitate the people to get into the police, then you do certain bidding. So systemic challenge, again, that these kind of things throw up, that these are things that society needs to address. But, of course, we can keep talking and highlighting these things.
I mean, we've identified our problem. And I think it's something we know how to do well. We can point at the problem. But just how well are we willing to solve this? Because we had the conversation on Friday. And, you know, our guests stopped short of saying that, you know, these court orders were shopped for, as it were, and they reference that, you know, this particular governor or party is in charge in this state, so you can understand why it went that way. This other party or governor is in charge in the other state, so you understand why it went that way. And generally, there's that sense that, you know what, it is political affiliations that decide what courts eventually come out with, especially at those levels in the state. So we know those problems. If it's a thing of appointments, then let's sort it out. We can't be going round and round in circles, doing the same things and expecting the same result. They say that is what?
But you know, yes, politicians have a huge role to play, huge parts when these things happen, because when they put the judiciary under pressure. I think I remember Yusuf Ali saying at some point many years ago saying, look, politicians should let the judiciary be, because he says there's just so much pressure on the judiciary that they're choking them. So, but all of these things, now that we're getting to that time, and then you heard Mr. Digboro was saying, look, CJN, remember, how did he come into office, ex parte, or that? So people may feel, well, if that happened in your case, on what grounds are you then coming? So he always, what goes around, they say, comes around. But at some point, there's going to be an end to some of these things. And so we then move forward. So
there's an end to litigation, right?
Yeah. And then, you know, the first vice president also of NBA also did say, look, if we don't amend the laws about how judges are appointed, there might be a problem. Well, I don't know the impressions they have about the National Assembly, because before they went on recess, it was about the same amendments. And we know the way that one went. So with this one, can they amend that bit such that you take away, or when you amend how who appoints judges.
You're trying to coin it for them, right?
That's going to be a big one because you're taking away a huge chunk of certain powers from the governors. If they don't have the judiciary, what do they have? So because they will be careful and say, wait a minute, if you take it away from the governors, who's going to have it? Who's going to control? Because at some point, somebody will have an impact. Look, they may call them independent, but are they really
independent? Mark, I guess you want to weigh in.
Well, just to quickly say, I think it's important to point out that the current CJN wasn't appointed via an expertise. It was the former CJN, I think Mr. Adigborua was referring to when he said he was removed via an expertise order. So there are huge questions as to how expertise have been used in the past. However, I think it'll be interesting to see just what will happen, because also from his submissions, it would seem that the current CJN and any CJN at that cannot really exercise any powers. It would seem that as our second guest pointed out, what he has done is invited the chief judges of those states to intervene in the matter, to see how they can have a discussion on the matter preceding an NJC meeting. So we will see what will happen in that regard, especially when you consider the fact that even after the NJC has sat, the best they can do is give recommendations to the state government. So you have to ask, will anything really come out of this if at the end of the day, politicians were the ones that started this and it's going to still end up on their desk in terms of what should be done to the judges who might be perceived to have erred in this instance, assuming the NJC were to, pursue disciplinary measures with these judges. So I don't know. I want to be optimistic, but I'm not as optimistic as I would normally be. I mean, looking at how optimistic the headlines sounded this morning, the CJN moving in swiftly, summoning the 6 chief judges of these different states, and what we think should come out of that. But when you look at what the end results will eventually be, you have to ask what is going to happen at the end of the day. And don't forget that before now, Mr. Adigborua did point out that there had been some attempts to sanction, there had been recommendations to sanction some erring lawyers and I don't know if judges were mentioned, but some erring lawyers. And he says nothing was done in that regard. So, but with the statement issued by the NBA, we do not know, and he has also said that the NBA can do something about it. After all, there's a body of benches. We do not know what exactly is going to come of it. But whatever comes of it, as Chamberlain did highlight, it's important that this is being highlighted as we go into 2023, because it will seem that the High Court already saw that it's the Federal High Court, very important to point it out, already saw this coming and issued the circular which went into circulation. We do not know whether or not the High Courts, the Federal High Courts, are obeying that circular and what effect it will have on the state high courts as well, since they're all supposed to be independent jurisdictions. But I think that we'll wait to see what the outcome of the meeting is. It's instructive to note that there's been no date set for this meeting with the Chief Judge of Nigeria, with the Chief Justice of Nigeria, beg your pardon. But perhaps the conversation around this might quicken, if they have not fixed the date, quicken the scheduling of a date for this meeting between the Chief Justice of Nigeria and the Chief Judges of these 6 states. Gentlemen.
Well, yeah, I guess we'll see. So what happens? Is it illegal for any governor to say, well, I've seen the recommendations, but you know what? No, I don't think I'm going to act on this. What happens? All right, well, let's switch now to, we do have Mr. Deji Doherty, the chairman of the PDP in Lagos. He's joined us now. Good morning again, and thank you for joining us today on the program. So, well... Good morning, Chamberlain. All right, now... And good morning, viewers. This matter concerning your party, I mean, it appears your party is now between the rock and the hard place. How do you see events playing out? Because, I mean, looking at how all of this is going now, you have an October date rather than a December next date. So how do you see all of this eventually playing out?
Well, I'm sure your question is centered around the little misunderstanding in the People's Democratic Party right now. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I think we did attend the NEC meeting, the 92nd NEC meeting, called by the NWC of the party sometime last week, and we also had all the state chairmen meeting well before that, which was a pre-NEC meeting, and there was a BOT meeting before that, and there was a Governors Forum meeting before that, and I believe that the structures, reconciliatory structures of the party have started meeting in order to resolve this problem. Now, unfortunately, the night before the NEC meeting and after the NEC, when nerves have been calmed and different orders have been, different players in the crisis have been met with, unfortunately, another order came unexpectedly, and I believe that order was already gotten before the reconciliatory meeting took place. So it was put out in the social media somehow, and it did have a damaging effect on a lot of things that we had already discussed before that day. But I believe that immediately that came up, all the machineries came back together again to try and diffuse that particular action that was carried out by one of the players of the crisis. So I believe that within the past 48 hours, 72 hours, I believe that a lot of meetings have been held, and a lot of changes are going to be made. A lot of withdrawals from court are going to happen, and I think we'll get back on track very soon.
Well, you sound quite confident, and I mean, I'm sure you followed the conversation all through the program this morning, and some of our guests have said, well, 30% of the problem comes from maybe the judges, another percent from lawyers, and they probably didn't speak for political parties, because essentially it's the political parties that approach the courts through their lawyers to get some of these orders. You have also been enmeshed in that as well. Perhaps we'll come to that. But I just want to know the thinking, because it's fair to have the side of political parties as well. The thinking of political parties when their internal mechanisms to be exhausted, as it were, and they go ahead, go to courts, get these orders, conflicting orders from courts of coordinate jurisdiction, and they leave INEC, the people, confused. What's usually the thinking? What spurs political parties or members to go this route?
Well, unfortunately, you have the good, the bad, the ugly in politics. I can admit that. If you look into the dictionary or the encyclopedia and you look for the word the devil, I'm sure you see the name of a politician there. It's embarrassing. You understand? Because this is a new trend in politics It's a new trend where you can win instead of you looking at the ballot box for you to promise the people what you can give them, for you to campaign and send out your manifesto. A lot of people now believe that politics, the two ways of winning is if you don't win at the ballot box, you win in court. And now politicians have taken it an extra mile into the political structure itself, the party structure itself, the administration of the platform you want to compete on, or you want to stand on when you want to achieve your political aim. This is a very dangerous scenario that is playing out politically in all political parties, and it must be stopped. Now, how can this be stopped? It must be stopped by the judiciary. However, we have, if you recall, the McCarthy and Sharif matters. PDP had gone through litigation for almost 3 years. And it created havoc in the party. The division in the party at that time is what we're even still trying to manage as a party today. So, if at the supreme level, it has already been stated at the supreme level, at the supreme judgment has said that political parties' internal mechanism, internal administration is not the business of the judiciary. That has already been stated. There are many mechanisms to address your grievance. And if you look at democracy is such that even in a political party, you might not have the view, you might not have the same views. So definitely there will be some winners, there will be some losers, but nobody wants to lose. Nobody wants to lose, and that is the scary part. They even go to the point of death, they go to the point of killing, they go to the point of doing all kinds of things. And why are they doing that? It only shows that the politicians do not have the people at heart.
So if I get you correctly, Mr. Doherty, so if I get you correctly, you say that, well, the solution lies with the judiciary. You also say that the judiciary, I mean, it's well known that the judiciary doesn't have any business with internal party affairs, as it were, yet the solution lies with the judiciary. So maybe I'd like us to learn or glean from your own experience. You said that some people win at the ballot, some win at the courts. The whole controversy around the chairmanship of the PDP in Lagos, I mean, has it been resolved? Are you now the chairman, as it were? Did you get it via the courts or via the ballot? I think it's instructive to at least lay that out so Nigerians can, of course, learn from that.
You see, this is a part of what we're talking about. Okay? Now, in Lagos State, in 2018, Ebiola Feso, who was the chairman of Southwest, okay, saw a need for there to be an election in Lagos because the sitting chairman, which was Alhaji Salvador, left the party and moved to the APC. Now, Salvador moved to the APC, and immediately that happened, this gentleman, Dr. Dominic, was more or less appointed from the same zone by a kangaroo set of people. Unfortunately, I was even at that meeting. I didn't have an agenda. Chief Olabode George was the one that called the meeting. He called a meeting of leaders of the party to a meeting, and at the meeting, before you knew it, Dominic was already said to be nominated as the chairman. And some of us stood up and said, look, you understand, it's not the state ESCO that has nominated Dominic. However, because of the courage of Chief Olabode George, because of his position, you understand, They took it up to the national, and the national rejected it. But the national said, okay, let Dominic stay for 90 days while you go and conduct an election, because everybody in Lagos is asking for an election to be conducted to replace Salvador. I took part in that election. And because I took part in that election, okay, and other people took part in that election, I won the election. And I became the chairman. I was the chairman for several months before Chief Honorable got up again with the help of another Southwest governor to go to court to ask for my removal.
So
now,
okay, understanding this premise, as it were, how do we now factor in that court judgment? Because, I mean, you also said it, that maybe the solution lies at the court. And you recall that suit number LD 3600 GCM 2019, where the court, that's Justice Oyekon Abdullahi of the Lagos High Court, was ruled that in the sum, the case of the claimant succeeds completely, and the special Congress held, I think you referenced that, November 13th, 2019, was set aside, and there was no vacancies in the first place, which, I mean, essentially said that, I mean, the claimant is the rightful chairman of the party.
Well, he did not say that. If you read further down, you will notice that she said that she would like the party to go back and go and do the correct thing. Now, a lot of people I can go to court and tell the court, you slapped me. And I want the court to restrain you from coming to my house to slap me again. And the court will do so. You understand? Unfortunately for those that took the party to court, I am not a party to that case. I, Engineer Adediti Duarte, as the state chairman of PDP, is not a party to that case. So definitely, you cannot put a judgment on me when I'm not even a party to the case.
All right, Mr. Duarte. Okay, pardon me on that one. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens on your NEC meeting, which is coming 2 months earlier than scheduled. Will it settle all of these challenges faced, and where will the chairmanship be zoned to, which will ultimately determine where the presidency will equally be zoned to within the party. So those are all the dynamics that we're looking to see how that will play out. But we do thank you for your time this morning, Mr. Deji Duarte, Chairman of PDP in Lagos.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, let's take a look at some of your emails. We've got this one from Festus, who talks about the contradictory court orders, saying the proliferation of contradictory court orders in our country poses a great risk to the integrity of our legal system. An urgent dialogue among judicial bodies, MBA, politicians, and all stakeholders is crucial to save our legal system. We need incorruptible judges, and judges found wanting should be removed from the bench.
Well, Paul is looking forward to the 2023 election, saying, I'm of the opinion that INEC should consider the possibility of ensuring that at least 75% of the registered voters participating in an election for such votes to be considered and the acclaimed candidate returned. I think that will be a lawmaking process, right? Goes on to say this will surely lead to improved participation of Nigerians in our electoral system and definitely lead to true democracy, which will bring an end to our current situation where less than 30% of the registered voters determines who manages the affairs of the entire 100%. This is not a true representation of a democratic system or democratic system.
Well, that might be a very difficult one, but if you can pull through, why not? Look at this one. Victor Owo is talking about the judiciary, the politician, and the common man. He says, as it said, the judiciary is the hope of the common man. Is this saying still true? Not so sure anymore. When one case has 5 interpretations, that is total confusion. Let the politicians take their hands away from the judicial system and all this will end. A politician believes if he does anything, you can go to court because he knows the ways of the court and nothing may come out of it. Leave the judiciary alone. That's from Victor Owo. And I think it's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you for your comments and contributions this lovely Tuesday morning. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikelu.
I'm Train Belinuso. Goodbye.